to hear what's going on. And finally, what I'll offer is why we brought everybody in one room is because we want to be, like I said in the beginning, a resource. So please reach out to us, anything we can do in regards to any issue you may have with the federal government. One of the things that's frustrating to me that I hear is that we may not get you the answer you want, but we'll at least get you an answer, even if it's no. Because a lot of times I'm hearing people, when they deal with an agency, they're not given a clear indication as to where they stand. And then they spend months, years dealing with the situation. Now my hope is we can get to a positive result and a yes result. We have a lot of those cases over the 4,500 cases that we have dealt with in regards to citizens and constituents of the 23rd and 29th Congressional District. And a lot of them have ended very positively. But there are going to be situations where it's just the rules are the rules and that's the way it is. And we just want to get clear information to people. And so with that, I do want to put one little shout out. Ron Hofstas has been an advocate of a program, Trust in the Lives of Older Women, that I am very supportive of. Amo was very supportive of it, and Amo and I have talked numerous times. I talked to Amo at least, it seems like twice a month, even sometimes more than that at a minimum. And that is a program that if you're not aware of, it is a great asset to our community and to our area. And if anyone wants to find out more information about it, Ron is here today. To be a source of information in regards to what it is. It's essentially a women's group, as you know. Our population is aged. A lot of males tend to go first before female. This is a way to get women in a support setting in an organized fashion to work together. And we've had great experiences with the different groups that Ron has set up where people not only have the interaction of the group, they have share information, best practices, and work their way through some real hard times as they deal with the situation like my mother did when her spouse passed when he was 48. And having a support group like that would have been ideal for her. So I give a little plugging commercial to Ron Hofstas and the Trust in the Lives of Older Women. So with that, we're all ears. So anything you want to talk about? Yeah, sir.
Because you mentioned it, you mentioned Social Security and the fact that it very well might be bankrupt in a matter of 10 years or so. It's not going to affect me because I may not look it, but I'm 83 years old. And I suspect that I would be gone by that time. But I was involved with the birth of 7 children, and my children worked very hard to get through school, to college, and now I'm the father or grandfather of 20 grandchildren. What in the world are you people in Washington attempting to do to correct the concern that you just expressed about the fact that, Social Security and Medicare, both of which are wonderful institutions, should be continued for all of those who are coming after us?
Well, start with the positive, but I'm always the eternal optimist, being the youngest of 12, and having 44 nieces and nephews. If my mom was alive, I think it would be a 40, maybe 42. I hope they keep popping up. I can't keep track of them. The good news is that over the last 2 years, we have brought the debate on Social Security and Medicare in particular into the public debate. And why is that good? Because before that, if you recall, the general position of everybody in Washington was Republican and Democrat. These are the third rails of politics. You cannot talk about them, you cannot touch them, because if you do, you will lose your re-election, you will lose political support, you will lose your popularity and all those things. I think that has changed now, because I think by us putting the spotlight and leading on the issue to say we need to do something in order to preserve these programs, we're getting more and more people, and we're part of a lot of groups that work on a bipartisan basis, nonpartisan, no labels. There's the Go Big Coalition, that these are integral parts of those conversations to say, where are we going to work together in order to solve these problems? I reached out to the ARP directly, the president of the ARP, in a non-public personal letter to him and saying, look, you're very good. The ARP, God bless them, and they're a great organization, they're very good at telling me as an elected official what we can't do. We can't touch Social Security, we can't do Medicare. They're not as good in the regard of, these are solutions that we could get behind in order to solve this problem. And I'm trying to push them to that level. And they responded, the first letter wasn't responded to. The second letter, I give them credit, they responded to finally after the second one went. And now we're having that conversation to go to the next level. So, what are we going to do? I think there has to be some guiding principles as we go through this debate. And one of them you touched upon. There are people that rely on Social Security and Medicare that rightfully earned it and are in the system or on the benefit, that you cannot pull the rug out from underneath them and say, we're going to impact those individuals. And the good news is we still have enough time, 2024 for Medicare, 2033 for Social Security, that you can legitimately, based on arithmetic, not some arbitrary cutoff date, and right now it's the 55-year-old threshold, where you can say all those folks, because they're so close to retirement, they don't have an ability to adjust their retirement plans, you can take them off the table and let them receive exactly what they earned and what they promised, and you then have to talk about changing the programs for those, for your 7 kids that are 54 and younger. And that's just the reality. And we have to do something, because each year goes by, next year, probably not going to, all the indications, all the math, all the arithmetic, 55 is probably not going to be the year next year that we can draw that line. It's probably going to go up to something like 56 or 57 because the numbers don't get better with age, they get worse. So that's the good news. The bad news is that we're talking about changing the programs for the purposes of saving them. So it may not be the exact Medicare or the exact Social Security program that you all know, we all know, but we have to reform them in order to save them, and that's where the change has to come in. And I've been supportive of concepts like age indexing for that next generation, that 54 and younger type thing, because I think that's a common sense to me. That's a common sense proposal in the sense of we're living longer as a society, and maybe we need to reflect that in our qualifying ages and things like that. So there's things like that that we're willing to consider and do because it's important to save them. So I don't know if that answers your question, but there's a lot more discussion that needs to happen.
Well, I thank you for what you said, and I believe what you said, but I also think that you personally, if you are dead serious about what you said, need to try to influence some of your fellow Congress people to wake up and smell the roses and do the right thing.
And the good news on that, when I first got to Washington, because being the youngest of 12, I talked to everybody. There was about 20 of us that were getting together on a regular basis across the aisle and having these conversations. Now I can honestly tell you there's a couple hundred of us that are doing that and communicating with each other and saying, this needs to be done.
Yes,
that's a good sign. You don't hear about that in the headlines.
No, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But I'm going back to, I don't remember the dates because I'm getting old. I sometimes forget things. But I said to you at a meeting in the town hall in Elmira sometime last year that you people in Washington need to understand that you are an American, not a Democrat and not a Republican, and you need to think about all Americans, living, dead, and
To come.
coming.
Yeah. Amen. And that's what we try to do. And we're trying to do that not only in talk, but walking the walk. And that's why we do things like reaching out to the ALP and not do it publicly, not for the sake of a headline, not for the sake of politics, but because it needs to be done. And let's get it done. So we're going to continue on it. And I think this debate is ripening as we speak. And I think what's going to help the debate, and again, I'm the internal ombudsman, looking at the situation of Social Security disability and it being immediate in 2016, I think that's going to awaken a lot of people in America to say, oh, this is a real situation. And we need to fix Social Security disability, but we also have to fix Medicare and Social Security because we don't want to get that close to those cutoff dates. And then, God forbid, we've done nothing in Washington, D.C., and the systems collapse, but people are relying on them. That's a catastrophe. That's a dereliction of duty that I don't want anything to be part of. I went there to do something. We need to do it. and get it done. Yeah.
Thank you for your information, but what is the current status of the cost of living raised on the change cost of living?
Yeah. The proposal, one of the proposals that has been kicked around in Washington is the change CPI is what they call it. You read about it in the paper, and it's a way to try to quantify the inflationary impact across America. And the reason why it's called change CPI, getting in the weeds a little bit, is that they chain it to certain criteria. And the problem with the change CPI that came out with the president, for example, that we've not supported, is that he expanded it beyond Social Security and Medicare, and actually into the VA, and he also did it to the income tax brackets, which would make a lot of people that aren't paying higher taxes because of the way the inflation would impact those brackets. It's kind of an indirect tax increase on the people. They would bump up to a higher level bracket because of inflationary impacts. So we're not supportive of that. Now, the concept of getting a good, quantifiable way to measure inflation and the cost of living adjustment needs to be done. They're not using all the data that they can. They need to take into consideration food prices, gasoline prices, in a much more effective manner, much more quicker than what they do now. Because we've heard the stories, and I get it, that people with Social Security limited cost of living adjustments, but then you go to the grocery store. I mean, I go with my 2 kids, and first time this happened about 6 months ago, or a little longer now, I was looking at our family budget, and I'm looking at the grocery bill, and I'm like, what the heck did you buy at Wegmans? What are you doing down there? I told my wife, Jean. She's like, oh yeah, why don't you go down and do it one time? So I did. And I got like half a cart and spent $100, and I was like, what did I buy? So it's happening across, and as you see, gas prices going up. So we need a better reflection of it, but I also think when you talk about change CPI, that is a potential thing you can do, not to present seniors. There's a way maybe down the road of the age so that people then can understand exactly what that calculation will lead to and they can plan for it. So that's why, again, that principle of not impacting present seniors, I think, has to be respected. I appreciate what the president did by including it in his budget proposal, because it again fosters the idea and the concept of we need to fix these programs in order to save them. And that's good. That's another positive sign in my perspective that we're getting to a level of discussion in America where the politics is being set aside and we're trying to solve the problem. So I appreciate him doing it. I just don't appreciate it. I don't support the way he's doing it. But we can maybe bridge that difference and find that common ground. So I don't think that in and of itself is anything that's going to occur right now. But down the road could be something that will actually work. Yeah, Ron, and we'll go over here. We'll go back and forth like that.
Picking up on what this gentleman's saying, what's being done to facilitate more working across the aisle? I mean, the stuff you hear is that there's just loggerheads about getting things done. What are you doing and others are doing to build more?
The good thing is, I mean, it started off very informal. Like I said, there was about 20 of us, so to speak, that just started conversations. And now it's becoming more formal. And there are different groups that you can point to. The Go Big Coalition and the No Labels group is something that we're engaged in and that we're part of. And it's about putting more and more members, and the No Labels group is another example of reaching out to the Senate to bring senators into the conversation, because that's one thing I'm learning in the few years I've been there, is not only do you need the relationships in the House, member to member, you need Senate and House relationships, because obviously we have the 2 branches, the House and the Senate, that have to work together. And so it's becoming formal and it's fostering. No Labels, we meet every week. We have a little coffee hour and there's an agenda and we just kind of grow. The Go Big Coalition, the reason why it's the Go Big Coalition is it was centered around getting this debt crisis, this now $17 trillion essentially of debt under control. And in order to do that, you need to go big. You need to have the big deal. You have to have the grand bargain, is what they use language in DC to describe it as. And there's more and more of us doing that on a regular basis. And the only way you can foster it, Ron, is just sincerely go there. And it's not about giving up your philosophical principles. It's a recognition that we many of us have different opinions as to what is the best path to take. But what I find in these conversations, even the most liberal and the most conservative members, there's a lot more common ground when you start having these conversations. And that's what we're trying to create, is an environment where that can be fostered. And those groups are doing that. The last thing that we're also doing is trying to just simply, on a personal basis, on the Ways and Means Committee, which I serve, which is the Tax Committee, Trade Committee, Healthcare Committee in the U.S. Congress and for America, we have reached out to individual members on the other side of the aisle, and we've set up some coffees. And we've had guys like Earl Blumenauer, Richie Neal, Ron Kine, multiple Democrats that we've invited. Come on in, we've got plenty of room, plenty of room. You just have to sit up front, just like a church. No, you don't have to sit up front. Kidding. And so we've done simple things like that since being on the committee, because especially as we do comprehensive tax reform, I want to develop as many personal relationships as I potentially can, because one thing I have found in life is that if you know somebody, if you know them personally, you go to the same church, or you go to the kids playing the same soccer team, it is very hard to go to the floor of the House and throw that bomb, or go on Fox News or Rachel Maddow, like some of these members do, and throw the bombs at people if you know who they are personally. And most of the people, I will tell you, down in Washington, they're just normal people that really went there to try to do some good. And they're not evil, they're not, they're Americans. And so anyway, that's what we're trying to do, and that's what we'll continue to do.
Is that getting results? Do you think?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, it's getting results. It has strengthened our ability to represent the area. We have found allies. For example, Earl Blumenauer and I, from that conversation of coffee where we got to know each other, and he's a big bike rider, so I got to know all the personal stories behind all that. Out of that came our partnership on hospice and palliative care. He didn't realize how much I had been active in that arena. I didn't realize how much he had been active in that arena. And that has fostered a great relationship in regards to legislation that, to me, moves the needle when it comes to quality of care, especially for older Americans and people living with chronic and life-ending situations, to get that quality of care metrics into healthcare. And so we're working together as an example of where that came from. It was just over a cup of coffee in my office from an invite.